It feels like every day, doesn't it? Whether you're trying to get ahead at work or maybe figure out a career switch or even something simple like what to watch tonight.
Yeah, life just keeps throwing these puzzles at us.
Exactly, complex puzzles. And problem solving, really, that's just the skill of taking that messy situation and finding, well, the best path forward.
Mm,
And since you're listening, you're clearly someone interested in, you know, gaining knowledge,
yeah,
tackling those tough challenges. So we thought we'd really dig into a structured way to do it.
absolutely. Today, we're going to walk through a really practical seven-step process. Think of it like a mental toolkit.
A toolkit, I like that.
Yeah, a way to consciously guide yourself through complexity, whether it's work stuff, big public policy questions, or even those tricky personal decisions that leave you scratching your head.
Right. And to help us unpack this, we're leaning on some really sharp insights from a recent McKinsey podcast.
hmm Featuring Charles Conn, he's now CEO at Oxford Sciences Innovation, used to be a McKinsey partner, and also Hugo Sarrazin, who's a senior partner there now.
Yeah, these are folks who've spent, well, years really honing this stuff, the art and science of solving problems effectively.
So our mission today really is to boil down the core ideas of this seven-step method. Make it super accessible, super useful for you.
Like a shortcut to the good stuff.
Pretty much. Getting that distilled wisdom without you having to wade through everything yourself.
Okay, let's dive in then. Step one, define the problem. Now, that sounds, well, it sounds pretty obvious, right?
It does, doesn't it?
But what jumped out at me was how often this first seemingly simple step just gets skipped. Why is getting the definition right so critical? Feels like you should just start looking for answers.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? Our brains are kind of wired for speed. That reactive part, sometimes called the inner chimp, sees something familiar and just wants to leap to a solution.
Based on past experience?
Exactly. But if you haven't clearly defined the real problem, you risk letting that impulse take over and, well, you end up solving the wrong thing. Or just fixing a symptom.
Like mopping the floor while the tap's still gushing.
Perfect analogy. You need to define the problem to figure out how to turn off the tap first. Otherwise, all that effort is wasted.
Okay, that makes sense. So what are the key questions we should be asking right at the start?
The trick is to pause, step back, really ask, what exactly are we trying to solve here? What are the hard limits, the constraints we absolutely can't ignore?
Mm-hmm.
And are other things dependent on us getting this right? McKinsey, for example, they're apparently rigorous about this. They'll craft a precise problem statement,
How precise?
like debating the nuance between using or versus and in the statement.
Wow, or versus and. That sounds intense.
It does, but that level of detail forces everyone onto the same page, a shared understanding of the core challenge.
Can you give me an example? How does debating or versus and, or just that level of precision, actually help in the real world?
Sure, so imagine a company asks, can we grow in Japan?
Okay, seems like a fair question.
But it's super broad. Where do you even start?
Ah.
Through that rigorous definition process, they might get to something like, how can we boost sales of our premium product line by 15%
Okay, more specific.
among 30 to 45-year-olds in Japanese cities within 2 years without damaging our current brand image?
Okay. That's way clear. Tells you the what, who, where, when.
And the constraints,
Okay.
like protecting the brand. That focused definition acts like a laser pointer. It guides all the analysis that comes next.
I can definitely see the power in that. It sounds like you also need to understand the bigger picture, the context around the problem.
Absolutely critical. What pressures is the decision maker under? How fast do we need an answer? How precise does it need to be?
Right.
Are there any solutions that are just completely off limits from the get-go? And maybe most importantly, how open is the decision maker to different types of solutions?
Why is that last one so important?
Because understanding that context means you tailor your approach. You don't spend weeks crafting this brilliant solution that, for whatever reason, is just never going to be implemented.
So it prevents wasted effort, like knowing the rules before you play the game.
Exactly. You ensure your work is actually useful and actionable.
Okay, makes total sense. You need to know where the target is before you start shooting. So we've defined the problem carefully. What's step two?
Step 2 is where we start breaking it down, disaggregating the problem into smaller, more digestible pieces. And the tool for this is often called a logic tree.
Logic tree. Sounds, well, logical, like a family tree, but for a problem.
Kind of, yeah. The main problem's at the top, and it branches down into all the different factors that contribute to it.
Okay, but how does just drawing it out like that actually help find solutions?
It's interesting. The very act of logically breaking it down often sparks immediate insights. You see the components, how they connect.
Like taking apart a gadget.
Exactly. Once you see the pieces, you understand how it works and maybe where the fault lies. The experts we mentioned, Conn and Sarrazin, even suggest trying 2 or 3 different ways to break down the same problem.
By different ways.
To get different perspectives, challenge your first assumptions, make sure you're not missing anything crucial.
Can you give me a really concrete example of a logic tree? Something easy to picture.
Sure, the classic one is the profit tree for a business. Profits at the top.
Right.
How do you increase profit? Well, you can increase revenue or you can decrease costs. 2 main branches.
Simple enough.
Then revenue breaks down further. Price per item times the number of items sold. Costs break down. Fixed costs plus variable costs. Variable costs break down again. Cost per item times number of items sold.
Okay, I see it branching out.
And suddenly you have this clear map. Is profit low because prices are too low, or sales volume? Or are costs the issue, fixed or variable? It helps pinpoint the key drivers.
And you can compare that to competitors too, presumably.
Yeah.
See where you differ.
Precisely. Maybe your prices are fine, but their cost structure is way leaner. It reveals those critical levers.
That makes a ton of sense. It's like a roadmap for the problem's elements. But what about really huge, complex issues? Like improving public transport in a city. That sounds like it could have a million branches.
That's a great point. Seemingly overwhelming problems. But even that can be broken down. You might start with branches like route efficiency, operating costs, rider satisfaction, accessibility, environmental impact.
Okay.
And then under rider satisfaction, you could branch further. Service frequency, cleanliness, safety, ticket prices. See? It takes that huge, vague problem and turns it into a set of specific, manageable areas to investigate.
Right. I get it. You break it all down logically. But, it feels like that tree could get enormous, right? And really complex. That must be where step 3 comes in, prioritization.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Once you have that detailed map, that logic tree, you can't possibly explore every single twig and leaf with the same intensity.
Just not enough time or resources.
Precisely. So rigorous prioritization is absolutely key. You need to ask 2 crucial questions for each branch, each factor. 1, how much does this actually matter for the overall outcome we want?
How big is the lever, essentially?
Yes. And 2, how much can we realistically change this factor? Do we have control or influence over it?
Okay, so it's about impact and actionability. Focusing where you can make the biggest difference.
Exactly that. Go back to that public transport example. The city's overall economic health. Sure, it impacts ridership, but can the transport authority directly change it? Probably not much.
Right, too big, too external.
But things like bus frequency, station cleanliness, those are likely things they can influence more directly. So you prioritize those areas where effort translates into tangible results.
Got it. Concentrate fire on the targets you can actually hit and that matter most. Avoid getting lost in the weeds on stuff that's irrelevant or unchangeable.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Especially in messy public issues, it stops endless debates about things that ultimately don't move the needle or that nobody can control anyway.
Okay, defined, disaggregated, prioritized. We know where to focus. Now we need an action plan, yeah?
Yeah.
Step 4, develop a work plan. What does that look like?
So the work plan is where the rubber meets the road. You translate those prioritized areas into actual tasks.
Assigning jobs, setting deadlines.
Yes, assigning tasks, figuring out exactly what analysis needs doing for each priority area, setting timelines, defining what done looks like the deliverable.